I remember growing up, there was always a bit of a panic every Halloween about the safety of the candy you get while trick-or-treating, with things like razor blades in apples, that legend that was floating around a lot back then, and then also the contamination potential of someone sneaking drugs into your Hershey's bar. There was this fear that would circulate that some scoundrels might lace the Three Musketeers bars with crack weed amphetamine, a chimera cocktail drug of everything naughty. And, you'll have my mom come down shaking me like, Charles, be careful of the candy tonight. Take this testing kit with you. If it turns blue, call your uncle so he can come smoke it. Like, there was just this bit of fear that maybe the candy wasn't safe because of drugs or something that was being put into it. And most people, as they got older, they started to recognize how unlikely that was, because drugs are expensive, and it's not very common for someone to just give out a bunch of drugs for free. That just makes them lose a ton of money. Like, I'm sure there are some cases where it's happened, and I do remember a few very weird ones over the years, but in those cases that I can recall, it was like drug-laced candy that was meant to be sold to buyers, like, inconspicuously. It wasn't meant to just be given out willy-nilly, loosey-goosey on Halloween or something like that. However, what just happened in New Zealand has reopened an old wound here from when I was a kid about, like, being afraid that there might be drugs in candy. Because a New Zealand charity gave out lollipops that were laced with methamphetamine. And not just, like, little tiddlywinks of meth that were found in the lollipop. We're talking a fucking wumbo-sized amount of meth, potentially lethal. 3 people sought medical attention, and it seems like they're going to be okay, at least as we've been told right now. But potentially hundreds of people were exposed to this from this New Zealand charity giving them away. Now, of course, they didn't do it on purpose. This wasn't by design. They weren't sitting there doing this about their plan coming together to introduce meth to a few hundred people.
Importantly, the mission only accepts commercially manufactured food for inclusion in our food parcels, and the lollies appeared as such when they were donated.
As she just explained, the candy that they received was made to look like a real commercial brand. It wasn't some, like, knockoff or bootleg that was made in the back of a Ford Fiesta or anything. It was individually wrapped pineapple-flavored boiled sweets that were made to look like it came from the Malaysian confectionery brand Rinda. Spoiler alert, they weren't actually pineapple-flavored boiled sweets from Rinda. They were donated by a member of the public, and they weren't even candy at all. They were small blocks of meth, each weighing about 3 grams and packing up to 300 doses, which is potentially lethal. The charity explains that they only accept commercially manufactured goods because it's probably dangerous to just be taking in someone's home recipe. Maybe it wasn't prepared properly and it makes someone sick, then all of a sudden you've got a big problem on your hand. So they only accept commercially manufactured goods. And in this case, that's what they thought they were getting, but it was actually just a ruse. It was disguised to look like that, but it was actually just meth. Now, when I was initially learning about this story, I started scratching my head wondering, why would they even be taking in individual pieces of candy? Like, that seems kind of dangerous in and of itself, because even if the candy's not laced with lethal amounts of meth, that candy could still be all kinds of fucked. Just imagine some goober's walking down the sidewalk and he sees like a Jolly Rancher tucked away in the dirt next to some crops that he was spraying with pesticides, and he goes, "Oh, Jolly Rancher. Well, I'm not really hungry right now, but I'm sure someone would like to eat this, so I'll go ahead and donate it." Like, that's still probably going to get someone sick, right? Like, it's not like well taken care of food, so taking in like individual pieces of food seems like it'd be suboptimal. However, that's not what the charity does. This candy came to them in a sealed bag that looked like it came directly from the commercial manufacturer. They had no reason to suspect it had been tampered with at all because it was fresh out of the package. It's just not something you'd think of. There was nothing suspicious about it. It was a sealed retail package. So they didn't think to test it or anything.
Early yesterday afternoon, we received an alert of concern by a food parcel recipient who said that they had tried funny tasting lollies and wanted to let us know. They took the lollies still on site to the New Zealand Drug Foundation, whom we have a very good and close working relationship with. Tests confirmed immediately that the lollies contained, and this is very important, potentially lethal levels of methamphetamine.
From the sound of things, this could have been a lot worse if someone concerned after eating it didn't contact them. That person just may have saved lives by informing the charity that this lollipop that they had received, or no, it's not a lollipop. New Zealand slang is always so interesting to me because a sweet they just call a lolly. So it's not a lollipop, it's just like a little piece of candy. So they had this piece of candy and it was funky, right? You know, there was something fishy there. So they reported it to the charity, who then investigated and concluded that this shit's fucked. We gotta get this off the shelves ASAP.
To the best of information that we have at the moment, that is a group of people that is somewhere between 300 to 400 people that we began contacting last night.
It is a lot of people exposed to potentially lethal amounts of meth. Now, from the reports I've read here, it seems like since it was just chunks of meth, most people wouldn't just muscle through the whole thing. They wouldn't just eat the candy and be like, oh, this tastes like shit, but I'm gonna finish it. You know, they wouldn't take it like a challenge run in Elden Ring or something that they just pushed through. So from what I've read of the reports, most people who were exposed to the candy spit it out immediately. But because the dosage of meth was so high, even that split second it spent in their mouth opened them up to a lot of symptoms. And 3 people had symptoms that were so bad they sought out medical attention, and luckily they've all been discharged now. I imagine there's more of this contaminated candy out there. It's just a matter of tracking it down, which the authorities are doing right now. They're trying to locate all of these pieces of candy, and it's very reminiscent of what happened here in the States with the Tylenol murders, if any of you remember that. I imagine most of you remember that because we still feel the effects of that today. It's the reason why food safety is taken so seriously. So when those douchebags on TikTok used to go around licking ice cream, they got slapped. It's a very serious thing, food contamination. A long time ago, there was contaminated Tylenol that was just cyanide, and some people who took a Tylenol died because it was cyanide. And it led to a huge overhaul of the safety precautions taken around the industry. And I really get a similar vibe to this story here from New Zealand. So this food bank gets this contaminated candy and they start distributing it to a lot of people. That opens up a lot of people to potentially dying from meth. Now in the Tylenol murders case, it was someone, or even a couple of people potentially, that deliberately went around switching Tylenol capsules with cyanide and putting them back on the shelf. They were deliberately trying to kill people with it. And I really think in this case as well, this isn't something that happens by accident. This amount of candy with this amount of meth, this doesn't seem like something that could just go awry, oh, oops-a-daisy. I meant to donate the real candy, not my blocks of pure fucking methamphetamine. I had it right next to my blocks of uranium and I was just getting really confused and I just sent the wrong thing. This seems like someone that was trying to hurt people, in my opinion.
In terms of our concern at the moment, we are concerned that there are more of these substances out there. We note that disguising substances as something else to smuggle it into another area is common internationally. So we are not sure at this stage whether that is just contained within the city mission or whether people outside of this have these lollies as well.
That is absolutely something to consider as well, that maybe this wasn't deliberately put out there to hurt people. This could be people that were trying to smuggle drugs into the country and it ended up at the food bank. Because it is common when people are smuggling drugs in that they put them in all kinds of different, packaging, and they change the look of them. They get very creative when it comes to smuggling drugs, even outside of just the prison wallet with them sticking coke up their butthole and all of that, deep in their colon. They'll have drugs that are put into like hairbrushes and made to look like the actual bristles. Like there's all kinds of like really creative things people do when it comes to smuggling drugs. So maybe these candies were just meant to get the meth into the country and was never meant to just be distributed to hundreds of people. Because again, that is like, it's a huge amount of money they lost doing that. But the reason that I feel like it was probably deliberate is because it'd be really hard to somehow get those drugs into the country in this disguise and then forget about it and donate them. That just doesn't, to me, that just doesn't compute. Like, I feel like if they went through the effort of individually wrapping all of this meth to look like this commercially manufactured candy, why would they then donate it? Like, how would they misplace it or get it confused and start donating it? You know what I mean? And right now, authorities are investigating to see whether or not it was donated to the food bank on purpose or by accident, if it was intentionally sent there or if it just wound up there by pure chance, just happenstance, and then ended up getting donated. So maybe my perspective on all of this is just tainted because of the Tylenol murders, where I'm just assuming that anything that's this level of contaminated product is done deliberately to cause chaos and harm.
Police will also be investigating the origin of the methamphetamine, and there is a perception that it has been imported into New Zealand. We are aware of 3 people that have sought medical assistance as a result. None are currently in hospital.
The police are currently trying to figure out the origins of the drugs, as well as recovering all of them that might still be out there. They've apparently recovered 16 pieces so far, and then it's still unclear how many had been accidentally distributed. It could have been 1 packet containing 20 to 30 individually wrapped pieces, or 2 or 3 packets. They don't know yet, but they're trying to get it all taken as quickly as possible so that way more people don't, fall ill to it. If anyone from New Zealand is watching this, I would advise maybe just avoid the pineapple flavored boiled sweets for a little bit, just to err on the side of caution. I'm not an expert or anything, but it might be better to just be safe, You could probably go a little bit without the pineapple flavored boiled sweets to avoid just eating meth, So, yeah. Hopefully nobody else, gets this contaminated candy. And, hopefully everyone who has consumed it doesn't face any, long-lasting problems or anything from it. That's about it. See ya.